no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. Let's get this vote on, y'all. Let's get this vote on, y'all. Let's keep out the office, y'all. He's bad news. And he's looking to bring bad news to us. We don't want him there. We don't want him there. Find a place elsewhere. We don't want him there. He's trying to end me. He's trying to end me. He's trying to end me. Without me even knowing the ad that he put out there. I called to it later on. But the ad that he had put out there, the $85,000 ad that he put out there, without me knowing. I don't know this man from a hole in the wall. But that ad was a bounty over my head. I ate that. Every year for 13 years, I ate that. I feel like a Vietnam vet. Every time the weather gets cold, like my wounds start hurting when I see this man speak. I want to take him up north, y'all. I want to take him to the yard, y'all. But only y'all can do that for me. Bro. I want him to know that I'm still here. Love y'all.
Corey is the miracle. Because that guy that was in that cell saw Corey. And finally, the truth came out. Corey could have took himself out. He could have killed himself and said, you know what, it's just too hard. Somebody could have took him out in prison. We know those stories. Inmate found in a cell hung. Determination, he hung himself. Donald Trump's ad was more than just an ad. Bring back the death penalty. Bring back our police. This was a whisper into the most sinister, darkest enclaves of society for them to do to us what they had done to Emmett Till. Because the other side of this story is that they published our phone numbers, our names, and our addresses in New York City's newspapers. They were hoping, and I think they still have hope, that someone would do to us what they had done to Emmett Till. People began to write us letters. One in particular came in the newspaper by Pat Buchanan that said, you know what, let's just take the eldest one, Corey Wise. He said this, and hang him from a tree in Central Park. Let's take the others and horsewhip them. And then he urged us to do this by when? By May 1st. In a country that says you're innocent until proven guilty. They looked at the color of our skin and not the content of our character and deemed us guilty. The collateral effect of what they did was that a young pregnant Latina woman some months later was in her home. And this rapist and murderer who attempted to rape and murder, or who did rape, but attempted to murder the Central Park jogger, came into her home, brandished a knife. Now, I want you to understand, this was a young, pregnant Latina woman. She was home with her children. She pleaded with him. She asked him if he could just allow her to put her babies in the next room. We only know her story because he told the story. I imagine that she put her children in the next room, and I think she probably said, this is going to be one of the worst things that could ever happen to me. But I'm going to get through it. She came out, and he raped her, and his MO, his modus operandi, at that particular point in his crime spree was your eyes or your life. He, in fact, said he gave his victims a choice. Your eyes or your life. Those who wanted to live, he cut their eyes out. He didn't want to be identified in the court of law. But at this point, he was stabbing his victims to death. Lourdes Gonzalez lost her life. Her husband could have had a wife. Her children could have had a mother. She could have been another mother. But both she and her child lost their lives. He was called the East Side Rapist. He was called the East Side Slasher. They had been looking for him. They knew his MO, his modus operandi. But when they came and arrested us, they asked Corey, do you want to go downtown with your buddy? You'll be right back. Corey came home 13 years later. Corey is a miracle. Corey is the reason why we're called the Exonerated Five. But because they got stuck with the lie, predicated by the ad that Donald Trump ran in New York City's newspapers, they wanted to solve this crime quickly. And they fumbled. Many other people were victimized. Lourdes Gonzalez lost her life. People looked at us and said, good riddance. When the truth came out, Donald Trump was quoted to have said, now they're going to be rich rapists. When he was asked by April Ryan, when are you going to apologize to the Exonerated Five? He said what he said, further attaching himself to the lie. During the president debate, Kamala, she talked about us. Donald Trump said, well, they murdered somebody. I mean, we didn't murder anybody. He said, well, they confessed. We didn't confess to anything. We were found guilty of a crime that we didn't commit. I remember I went down to the spin room. I was there. I went down to the spin room and we started talking to the reporters, and all of a sudden there was a whole lot of commotion around the other side. And the reporter that I was speaking with, she kept looking and capturing my interview and looking and capturing my interview, and then when we wrapped, she ran over to where the commotion was. Donald Trump had already entered the room. There was a large circle that had formed around him. The circle might have been almost as big as this room. I somehow got myself up to the front of one of the sides. And when people recognized me, they said, "Are you going to apologize to the Exonerated Five?" He didn't hear them. And finally, I raised my voice for my own self and for my brothers. And I was respectful. If you look at the video, I said, "President Trump, I'm one of the Exonerated Five." He didn't hear me. I yelled a little louder, "Mr. Trump, I'm Yusef Salaam, one of the Exonerated Five." He turns around and looks at me. Can you believe he had the nerve to say, "You're with me, right?" No, 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 no. I couldn't believe it. And here we are now, if a black man was up there running for office and he had been convicted of crimes, he wouldn't even be able to pass go. If he had even been accused of crime, he wouldn't even be able to pass go. As a matter of fact, if you're convicted of a crime, you can't even vote. I'm a father of 10. That's not usually the response. Corey's an uncle to 10. But I got 7 daughters and 3 sons. And you know, we've been talking about the good book says be fruitful and multiply. And y'all know I was in prison, so I just been playing my part and doing my job. But look at God. Donald Trump's ad allowed for people to write us letters. One letter that was written to me, this came to all of us, but this one says, "The Lord will punish Yusef for what he did to that poor defenseless girl. You will also be punished for raising such an animal." He was talking about my mama. "He does not deserve to live, and neither do you." 35 years ago, we were run over by the spike wheels of justice. 35 years ago, after the ad that Donald Trump placed in New York City's newspaper, another person wrote to Yusef Salaam, "This letter is to let you know that your name has been placed on the list of enemies of society by the Citizens Army, New York City branch. You made a decision when you became one of the pack that decided that Central Park was your arena. So just remember that 20 to 30 years from now, some people will never forget. And maybe the one time that you don't check your back is the one time that somebody might just be there to say hello." We went from rejected to selected, and now I'm one of the elected. You see, when you include yourself psychosocially, you begin to realize that you matter. When you don't include yourself with the proper value, you imagine that there's a separate system running alongside the system in America that allows for your ideas to somehow coexist. The truth of the matter is that there is no separate system in America, even though we are trying to be the United States of America, divided and unequal. But the system says this: it's not a plug, I'm just holding up a book that happens to have my name on it. Punching the air. In the chapter called African American 2, while we talk, shout, whisper, Imani writes on her poster board, the 13th Amendment. Then she writes some more words, and Dr. Bennu nods. Y'all should know this, he says. Y'all should really understand this. Constitution of the United States of America, 13th Amendment, Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States of America or any place subject to its jurisdiction. Our Reverend Al Sharpton just laid out beautifully the landscape of what is in America. Even though I just read to you Section 1, it has no power without Section 2. Section 2 simply says, Congress shall have the power to enforce this article through appropriate legislation. I used to be out there marching for justice with my brothers. I remember we would get up and the text message would come from Raymond Santana and he would say, gloves back on. And we would stand up and there would be 5 of us out there on the corner with our families. Then all of a sudden, we started looking around and the crowd would swell and swell. We fought the system and are still fighting the system, all to and through our exoneration, which happened in 2002. On the front page of the Daily News, I left that one in my briefcase. But on the front page of the Daily News in 2002, December, one of the jurors was interviewed. And in big bold headlines, it says, we got the wrong kids. You would think that there was a speedy method to right the wrong. There was a speedy method to convict us. They looked at the truth and said, my bad. All along here, we had to fill out job applications. They said, have you ever been convicted of a crime within the past 7 years? Then there was a fight that we won. The new job application said, have you ever been convicted of a crime? The only thing that we didn't see was, there was some small print there that was missing the modern day wink emoji. It said, this will not hinder your opportunities of employment with us. Seems like the presidency doesn't have a bandbox. Maybe there is a bandbox. There's a whole effort trying to push forward that as a man and a father who has 7 daughters, I'm concerned when women don't have the rights to their bodies. As a man and a father, I'm concerned if I'm going to turn on the news and I'm going to hear about another Sandra Bland. If I'm going to turn on the news and I'm going to hear about another Sonia Massey. If I'm going to turn on the news and hear about a Breonna Taylor. I don't want to hear no more. There's never been 100% participation in the civic engagement. But non-participation, as our Reverend has said, is participation. And so we have to make sure that if you can vote, you vote. And if you can't vote, you organize. Corey said, learn how to vote. That's the same thing. We got to organize. We got to teach ourselves, understand that just like when we were marching for justice, I kept coming home and I said, who's in the halls of power that's listening to us? The only eyes that look back at you when you look in the mirror is yourself. You are the question, and you are also the answer. we have to become the revolution. Because the revolution will not be televised. And even though there's not necessarily modern media in the room, but I know this will probably go out to the social media that's out there. The revolution will not be televised. I can remember when that statement made me sad inside. Too young to be in it. Now I couldn't even see it. Why? Why couldn't the revolution be televised? The Last Poets, Gil Scott-Heron. As I grew up, I began to see. They left theirs, and I too wanted to leave a mark on history. A man in half, and I wanted to bask in the task that set men free. But a revolution, the revolution, is where I knew I had to be. The revolution will not be televised. They didn't want to display the victory of those quote-unquote lesser men. The revolution will not be televised. Smile. I know. Because we are the revolution.
Yes.
Last thing. When I think about my life, and I look back at the fact that in a Sankofa way, I can see the path. I realize the reason why I say I went from rejected to selected to elected, because when God turns you into a diamond, the pressure that will bust most pipes causes that piece of coal to be transformed and altered and broken into what is now useful. We are not called to dim our light. We got to turn it up.
Yes.
They wanted us to hide in plain sight. They wanted me to fear that letter about 20 to 30 years from now. God will not take me out until my whole reason for being here is done. And I'm thankful that I can see that, because we were built for times like this.